Good morning. For 7 years now, parts of Vancouver have been, if not terrorized, pestered to death by pimps, prostitutes, drug traffickers and whatnot. Now it's Mount Pleasant. And the residents there took the law kind of into their own hands yesterday and had a pajama party outside Mike Harcourt's office in the City Hall in Vancouver. A good reason to try and impress on the police and the mayor that something must be done before they all go crazy. Here is Steve Wyatt's report on the pajama party, which may be finishing now, may not be, outside the mayor's office at City Hall.
They arrived toting teddy bears and sleeping bags because they say they are more likely to sleep outside the mayor's office than at home. They are a few of the Mount Pleasant residents who are the latest victims of an old problem. By sleeping in at City Hall, they hope City Hall will move in on their neighborhood.
We've been invaded by an army of drug dealers, thugs and heavies, and pimps, and also some prostitutes. And
their customers, which we're fed up with.
The customers are going around and around the blocks till 6 o'clock in the morning. People that have to go to work at 6 o'clock in the morning are finding themselves with no rest whatsoever.
For his part, Mayor Mike Harcourt says it's not his fault.
What you people are doing is ignoring the fact that the changes that need to take place are in the Parliament of this country to amend the criminal code to prohibit street solicitation, something I've been fighting for a number of years now. And rather than create this kind of a scene, which isn't going to get you anywhere, because there are no city authority to deal with street solicitation, we tried that and our bylaw was thrown out of the courts. Our police have increased their strength in your community to the point where I have other residents who are complaining about being harassed by the police.
With that, the mayor left his pajama-clad audience for home. And it being dinner time, the protesters called out for pizza and toasted their campaign.
To a hooker-free Mount Pleasant.
Yes.
Oh, God. No, are you suggesting the hookers should be free, or do you want them out of your neighborhood?
Yeah.
We want the Pleasant back in Mount Pleasant.
To Pleasant with a capital T.
You're right.
After dinner, time to exchange hooker stories and a few pictures. Here the protesters are seen sharing the streets with the women they say are killing their neighborhood. All this seems to go by the maintenance staff as they sweep around this pajama party. And finally to bed. All 15 of them vow to do this every night until they get more police in Mount Pleasant. There are bound to be a few sleepless nights ahead.
Sleeping bag smells musty.
It's just before midnight now, and not a creature is stirring, not even the protesters. Here is proof that even sleep can become a media event. And when they awake 8 hours later, they will have hit their mark.
A good night's sleep? Oh, tremendous, thank you.
Just wonderful. No door slamming, no discussions about the cost of various performances.
No profanity. I'm so quiet we can hardly sleep. Oh, dear.
This is one of the peaceful areas of town, we can tell now. Now we know where to get a good night's rest.
That's for sure.
And sure enough, there they are on the front pages of the morning newspaper.
Oh, dear. What are nice people doing in a situation like this? Goodbye, folks. I'll be back shortly. Maybe Mr. Webster can help us. The mayor can't help us. We'll take help from anywhere.
And in the studio, fresh or almost fresh from the pajama party, is Phyllis Alfeld of the Mount Pleasant Action Group, whom you just saw on Steve's report. But first this morning, I want to deal with something which is worrying a lot of Canadian, especially British Columbia holidaymakers. That's a very simple proposition that if you buy a ticket on a tour or on a charter, if you get there, are you going to get back? It would seem to me that names like JetLink and Century Tours and Sunflight and Steve Mills Holiday Company and all these other outfits which went belly up one way or another have been around for years. So I want to get the clinical situation this morning from my friend in Victoria, who is Mr. Stewart Goodings, who is the Assistant Deputy Minister and former Acting Registrar of the Travel Industry and Consumer and Corporate Affairs. Later we're going to talk to the President of the Alliance of Canadian Travel Associations and, of course, Phyllis. But first to Mr. Goodings in Victoria after the break. And good morning to Mr. Goodings in Victoria. Mr. Goodings, when the BC government set up the Travel Agents Act in 1977, that was supposed to be the end of the fly-by-night outfits. What went wrong?
When the Act was set up, Mr. Webster, as you say, 8 years ago, it was set up because there had been some failures in the travel industry, and some people had lost their holidays and lost their money. But the main purpose of the Act was to make sure that consumers would be compensated if those kinds of things occurred again. I don't think there was ever the feeling that the Travel Agents Act could by itself prevent any failures in the travel industry. It's an industry that's subject to economic downturns, and like any other industry, it does have its failures. But the main purpose of the Act was to make sure that consumers were not adversely affected by any failures of that kind.
I know, but if I buy my ticket from an airline, a major airline, you know, and go through a major airline, I know perfectly well that while I may pay a bit more, I'm going to get there and back again, right?
Well, normally, we have had deregulation in the United States where a couple of fairly large airlines have failed.
Oh, is it enough?
So that you can't be totally secure by traveling with an airline, but agreed, in most cases, traveling with a major airline, you have no problems.
All right, there was a travel assurance fund set up, and it's paid out nearly $2 million to rescue our stranded tourists up to now, hasn't it?
That's right, close to that figure.
$1.75 million. Now, at the moment, that fund must be broke, that travel assurance fund.
You're right, there's very little money in it at the moment. We are expecting a loan from the government in the near future. Most of that will have to be used to pay off claims arising from the failures of Century and Holiday Condos earlier this year. And, of course, you're aware that JetLink's failure will also cost a large amount of money, and we're not yet certain exactly where all the funds will come to pay off those expenses.
Well, let's hope the taxpayer isn't coming to the rescue of travel agents of some kind, so that we have to pick up for the fact that they are working on a system which sees them automatically go broke. Is that not right, some of them?
I think the travel industry overall is probably no riskier than any other industry. Travel agents, as such, I believe, are pretty responsible and safe businesses.
Who are we complaining about?
It's the travel wholesalers and tour operators which can cause the biggest difficulty. We've had lots of retailers who have failed over the last few years, but very few of them have caused much of a drain on the fund. It's the big tour operators, like Century Tours, like JetLink, Sunflight of a few years ago. They're the ones that cause the problems of stranding people overseas and having significant drains on our fund.
Now, therefore, to understand it quite clearly, it means that when I go into one of these tour operators and I give him my check for $349 Hawaii and back or whatever, that he likely will be forced to use that money to pay today's bills from my money, which is for tomorrow's bills.
Well, they really shouldn't be doing that. They should be better capitalized than that. But some of the companies, they don't have enough money invested in them. Their profit margin is rather slim. And if they have a few charter flights with a load factor below their profit margin, then they will start to get into financial difficulty.
In other words, they buy a part of an aircraft or all of an aircraft at a cut rate at a special time, and if they don't sell all the seats, they're broke almost right away.
Well, or they sell the seats to some other tour operator, probably at a further reduced price. So certainly the cut rate operators are the ones that cause difficulty for the consumer and for the travel operator. but they're also the ones that provide tremendous competition and tremendous bargains in the process. And that's the difficulty for the government to administer a piece of legislation. How far do you go to prevent people getting into an industry who want to offer good, cheap fares to consumers to travel overseas?
But they're not good, cheap fares. They're horrible, cheap fares because you're stuck at the Gatwick in London not knowing if you're going to get back. And even if you're stuck in Gatwick in London and the travel fund is prepared to pay, you can't get word to the people over there that they've got a free flight home sometime.
Well, let's bear in mind, though, that a relatively few number of people are stranded over in Britain. A relatively few number of people were stranded in Honolulu for the Century flights. Now, admittedly, it's a big problem for the fund. I'm not denying that at all. But I think overall, we have to remember that there were many thousands more people who did travel on these relatively cheap fares and enjoy a holiday in Britain. I'm not trying to say that we shouldn't be doing our very best to keep marginal operators out of the business, but I don't think we should exaggerate the impact on the consumer here.
Well, there's been no increase on the fees paid to the fund, I believe, since 1977?
That's right.
How much do they pay to the fund now? And who pays into the fund? Who pays in?
All businesses operating as travel companies in British Columbia have to be registered. They pay $300 when they first enter the fund and first are licensed, and then they pay twice a year 50 cents for every $1,000 worth of non-scheduled travel business. So that's basically tours and hotels and charters and that sort of a thing. We get about $180,000 annually from the travel industry for the Travel Assurance Fund.
But one bad failure can take that whole $180,000 right out of your pocket right now.
Well, it can indeed, and this year so far we've had 3 major failures, and it's probably the worst year that we've had since the Travel Act came into effect, and that's obviously the reason why we have to consider some fairly strong measures to prevent such failures in the future and to limit the payout from the fund.
Didn't we have a report a number of years ago, I think it was the Chandro report, which wanted a council of kind of industry experts who would know when somebody was going to go belly up and step in? Were any of the Chandro recommendations ever implemented?
No, they were not. But they are, some of them now are at the point of being ready to be implemented. I think that the idea of an advisory council composed of people from the industry is a good one. And I think it's likely that something along those lines will be established fairly soon. We also now have a full-time registrar, Frank Bazarin, who was recently appointed. He had 25 years' experience in the industry. He knows the industry well. I think it's a good move forward to have someone with that inside industry knowledge to monitor what's going on in the travel business.
Does the Act, is it an Act that has to be amended, the Travel Agents Act, to be toughened up?
I think that there are probably some changes that we need to make to the Travel Agents Act, and the Honourable Jim Hewitt, our Minister, will be looking at some changes for the next session of the legislature. There are also some regulation changes which we can make without going to the legislatures. These are simply changes that the Cabinet can approve by itself, and we may need to do that to strengthen some of the requirements for getting into the business.
Anyway, if you're looking at a cheap tour and you can easily tell if it's cheaper than the other prices, it's strictly a case of let the buyer beware, you may be stranded.
Well, if you deal with a BC registered company, then you are protected by the Travel Assurance Fund. But I guess my advice to consumers is don't just look at the price. If you're going on a long-awaited vacation, you should also be looking at service, at reputation, and there are a number of things that should be taken into account before you simply settle for the lowest dollar price.
My thanks to Stewart Goodings, the Assistant Deputy Minister of Consumer and Corporate Affairs. Thanks, Stewart. Much obliged.
Thank you,
I'll be
Mr.
back with Dave Abbott of the Canadian Travel Associations later, but I may start off right now with Phyllis Alfeld from Mount Pleasant with the hooker problem after the break. What was that phrase you used just now?
That one.
Hooker zone.
Yeah.
I think it's good. Come on, let's give the police shit. Give everybody shit. Give me shit. I'm in a good mood this morning. I don't know why.
I've been doing this for a month. It's hard to keep up the hype all the time.
I've been doing 90 minutes television a day for 7.5 years. I'm crazy.
Yeah, you're a star though. Like you're a pro. I'm the normal.
Canadian Travel Association. It's a funny thing. If I snicker about this story, Phyllis Alfeld will lean across and belt me one, because she came in this morning and, you know, still in her pajamas. Very nice pajamas, by the way,
Thank you very much.
Phyllis.
Thank you.
And the first thing she tells me, and I believe her, is that she lives in a part of Vancouver which is almost officially a hooker zone, where the hookers have diplomatic immunity and life is quite intolerable. True or false?
Absolutely true, sir.
Did you ever think this would happen to you in Mount Pleasant?
No, I really didn't. I never thought I'd be on television in my pajamas either, Jack. But we've just reached the end of our rope. We're just mad as heck, and we're not going to take it anymore. We've had
And you're
it.
mad at Harcourt?
We're mad at Harcourt. We're mad at the chief of police.
Bob Stewart?
Absolutely, because they've deserted us. They've left us in Mount Pleasant with a very visible criminal element, and they don't seem to be doing a damn thing about it. They're sucking the lifeblood out of the community, and nobody will do a damn thing about it.
Well, now, trace the problem. I mean, I know the story backwards, how way back the courts made a stupid decision, a bad decision, I should say.
Yeah, I think Chief Bob Stewart finds the story very boring himself, because he went through it in the West End. But it isn't very boring to the people who live with it.
But they cured in the West End. The judge said, no more hookers in this area. Get the hell out, didn't he?
Well, the girls got to make a buck, and they're going to surface again, and they surfaced in Mount Pleasant. And what happened was they were, for about a year, they've been on the east side of Main Street in Mount Pleasant. And the pressure from the community groups got so fierce that at the beginning of September, school was opening also. And the King Edward campus of the Vancouver Community College is there, and they were knee-deep in hookers from morning until night. So the police encouraged the girls to move from the east side of Main Street to the west side, and this is at the beginning of September, and almost overnight we got 135 prostitutes and assorted pimps and thugs moved literally into my front yard. And it was just hell.
Tell me about it. I want to hear about it, because
for
you see...
night, people always seem to think, when they see a prostitute on a corner, that's all they see. They see a girl on a corner. They do not know the problems that are associated with prostitution. And once the police have designated an area as a hooker zone, the girls, the pimps, the thugs, the drug dealers all seem to enjoy. You could almost call it a diplomatic immunity from prosecution. Everything goes to hell. No laws are enforced at all. And what happened with my husband and myself is we had hookers working in front of my front gate. Their pimps were hiding in the bushes. They were east, west, north, south. We were under siege. And I phoned the mayor's office. I went down to the mayor's office every day and I tried to see him. And we got his sympathy. We don't want his sympathy, we want his help.
What help do you want from him? Because you see, Harcourt does at least take the position. See, the guy who held up this bill, the people who held up this bill to be quite political about it was, of course, the NDP. And the Liberals, too, were gutless. The Liberals had all kinds of opportunity to bring in this comparatively simple Bill C-49. They were gutless. The NDP wanted to make a worse situation, in my opinion. Then in came the Tories, and the Tories said, eventually, we'll pass it if the NDP doesn't drag its feet. Now, the NDP are not dragging their feet anymore, and this should be passed in 6 months. Will that solve your problem?
I am sick to death of hearing people tell me the solution lies in Ottawa. I don't live in Ottawa. I live in the city of Vancouver, and Mike Harcourt is our mayor, and Bob Stewart is the chief of police of the city of Vancouver.
But they tried a bylaw, and the bylaw was useless, as you know what. The bylaw was silly.
Well, John Crosby is dealing with an amendment to the criminal code regarding public street prostitution and street soliciting. He hasn't suspended the entire criminal code. What about the drug dealing? What about the pimping operations? As Chief Stewart told me the other night at the Vancouver Police Force, police board meeting, I'm getting a little tired here, he told me that once the prostitutes move in, the criminal element moves in. Well, I told him we want the criminal element out of there, and we want them out of there now, and they can enforce the criminal code. And as far as the disruption to the neighborhood that is caused by the constant traffic that never lets up, the Street and Traffic Bylaw and the Motor Vehicle Act are available to be used. There are resources available to deal with it, to give some relief to the residents now. This isn't New York City, Jack, it's Vancouver, and people should not be afraid to go out of their homes at night.
But
It's
the police
pathetic.
said, I mean, acting under the mayor's instructions and with the full cooperation of Chief Stewart, they set up a prostitution task force, did they not? Which is there 7 days and nights a week.
Well, I'm afraid it's not. The Prostitution Task Force was set up on September 18th. And what they do is they work 4 days a week. And I explained to Chief Stewart that the bad guys work 7 days a week. And we need a little help out there. We need a lot of help out there. And he said, well, police work a 4-day week. Doesn't make any sense to me. Does it
gotta
make
be
any
joking.
sense to you?
You've got to be joking. You told the chief that...
I had to tell him that the bad guys work
7
7 days a week. Yeah. I also had to tell him that the fellows in my back lane at 3 o'clock in the morning sure as heck are not selling soap flakes.
Before we come to that, though, you told Chief Stewart that the bad guys work 7 days a week. Are you telling me the Prostitution Task Force is only there 4 days a week?
You got it.
Which days are they there?
Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, we're on our own.
What happens Sunday, Monday, Tuesday?
Well, the girls are back in force, the pimps are out again, and it's just a zoo. It's a carnival.
Tell me
the whole thing's a joke.
Tell me the experience of the old lady next to you.
Well, a
close
lot
to
of
you.
the people in my area have lived there for 30, 40 years, and to say 3 doors down from me, there's an elderly couple living there. And at 3 o'clock in the morning, on a Tuesday night, of course, when we don't have any police, she was awakened in the middle of the night by, she thought people were breaking right into her house with the noise and everything. And I said, well, did you phone 911? She said, my heart was pounding so hard, I was shaking, I was terrified. So she just ran out onto the porch in her nightgown, and she confronted this, I guess I'd be safe in saying it was a prostitute, and another man with her, who we can assume were shooting drugs. She said they were quite stoned, and she chased them out of her yard. Now, she is living in terror, she and her husband. They will not answer the door at night. They will not come, go out at night at all. Should I tell her the solution lies in Ottawa to call Ottawa? Should I tell her to call a social worker? I mean, where are the police? People are living in fear and in terror, and where are the police? It's not New York, it's Vancouver, and it should never happen. They
Now,
should be ashamed of themselves.
You yourself, you see what's happened here, Phyllis Alfeld, is that when the Chief Justice gave the injunction prohibiting prostitution in parts of the West End, he did so because of the abominable social circumstances which you are describing, and because the criminal code was powerless, he made an injunction under old common law and said, get the hell out. But they came to your place.
We've had them long enough, Jack. If the politicians and the police look on prostitution as so favorably, and the criminal element so favorably, then let's move them to another neighborhood. We've had them for a year. I think every neighborhood should have it on a rotating basis.
That'd be a good idea.
I think it's a wonderful
East
idea. I
West-
think we'll move them to Fairview next.
Oh, the mayor lives on Fairview,
Yes,
doesn't he?
I don't think he'd like his wife being propositioned every day either.
Maybe you
He'd be
should.
propositioned himself.
Maybe you should suggest that to the move them to Fairview.
I told yeah,
What
I'd
about
like them to move.
What about Shaughnessy?
They wouldn't last 5 minutes in Shaughnessy.
Tell me, do the customers follow them everywhere they go?
Well, they certainly seem to be. But the girls are certainly not at a loss for customers. Business is just booming.
What happened to your course at the college that you were taking?
Well, when you're awakened every night when I say I lose sleep over this, people think I'm saying that figuratively, but it is literally. You wake up to the sound of screeching tires and horns honking and profanity and street fighting and glass breaking, and you wake up, if you go to bed at midnight, you wake up at 1:15, 2:20, 3:15, 4 o'clock, because it never stops, it goes on all night. Prostitution is often a nighttime activity, although we have it during the day as well. So you just can't sleep, and you cannot go to school and not sleep at night either. I had to quit school over this because I just couldn't function at all.
All right, what support do you think that Mayor Harcourt and the chief should give to the residents of Mount Pleasant?
I think they should do what it takes to clean up the
I'm
area
asking-
because they let it deteriorate like
Good.
that.
I mean, I'm well aware of the problem, well aware of what went wrong with our system of laws, but what happens now? You tell Phyllis what you think now, after the break.
The complaints about prostitution have gone on for...
This is Bill C-49 to amend the Act on Prostitution. It's more complicated than it need have been, but when it comes in, and the NDP have promised not to hinder it this time. We've got Robinson's word on that. It won't solve the whole problem, but it'll chase the hookers off the streets if the police, as they will do, enforce this. A motor car is now a public place once this passes. Any place to which the public has access, express or implied, is now a public place. So the hookers can't go into a parking lot and thumb their nose at the police if they're performing a sexual act with a customer that are there. That'll help, but it won't get rid of the pimps and the pushers.
It might even be too late by the time that bill comes through, Jack.
What do you want?
Because the good people are fed up and they move out of Mount Pleasant and the area becomes taken over by the criminal element.
Well, we've gone over this subject so often, it's just incredible, and nobody expected that they would concentrate on one district, I don't think.
Well, we got it.
You got it.
Maybe
Let's see
you're
what
next.
people say. Well, go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack. Good morning, Phyllis.
Morning.
I really think you're barking up the wrong tree. Now, I'm not really a bleeding heart, but the fact of the matter is that Brian Smith is the one to apportionately put the blame in. Phyllis, I agree this is not New York City, but it is Vancouver. It's a big city. These situations do occur. I mean, the problem, as Jack will know and will very well tell you, arose when they kicked the prostitutes out of the clubs. And now they're on the street, and when enough political pressure was put on the provincial government, they did something about it. The prostitutes moved east into your territory. Obviously, they can't do that again, or they'll move further east. But if they move west into Shaughnessy, you can bet your sweet Bippy that they would act accordingly and very swiftly.
We all know that.
You know, so I think the blame here should be apportioned to a Brian Smith who is just hiding like a little wimp in the bushes, afraid to speak out and say, come on, this is a problem here. It's got to be addressed. Let's go to it.
Brian Smith won't do anything.
No?
He's already said he won't do anything.
I understand that, but you see, the fact of the matter, Phyllis, you're barking up the wrong tree with Harcourt and the police chief because they really don't have the power to act. The police don't have the money because of restraint to hire more police officers to protect your neighborhood.
So
I mean, you know, the situation has been shot all to hell because of restraint, and I mean, it's only helped these.
Okay, you've said enough. What do you say, Phyllis?
I just want to say, should we all at Mount Pleasant go to hell in a handbasket while everybody's standing there saying their hands are tied?
The real fault, of course, is in the slowness of the Liberal government, followed by the Tory government, in amending the criminal code. The mistake was made in the prosecution against the Penthouse. A mistake was made, in my opinion, in the Debbie Hutt case. But if a judge decides that before a hooker can be convicted, she's got to drag you up the alley and perform the sex act, nothing you can do about it except change the law.
Do you think Philippones will take the girls back? Please?
The clubs will take the girls back.
We're sorry. Take it back. We made a mistake.
Go ahead, please.
The only thing that's going to stop prostitution is AIDS. And
is what?
AIDS.
Oh, come off it. Well, it certainly will have an effect on promiscuity, I'll tell you. We had a girl on there last night saying that she'd continue hooking even if she got AIDS. Remember that? Did you see that last night on the
I was
BCTV
at City Hall,
News?
sir.
No, I don't like that crap. This AIDS, I don't even like the mention of it. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I can sympathize with the lady that's sitting across in her nightwear. It looks rather nice, I might add.
Thank you.
Getting down to a little bit of seriousness, Jack, the prostitution fact is a fact of life. As long as somebody wants to buy, somebody's going to sell.
We know it's a fact of life.
Okay, well, there may be some naive people who don't realize it. Why not declare an industrial zone, prostitute zone, as somebody has already suggested?
We already have it at my house.
No. You're in a housing area. I'm talking.
I'm in an M1 zoning.
I'm sorry?
I'm in M1 zoning. It is not strictly residential. That's why we got dumped on.
Well,
M1, what's M1?
Warehouse.
Warehouse zone.
But the houses there have been there for since the beginning of time. My house is
that's a
perfectly
technicality.
legal.
What I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
There is no federal government in Canada which is going to legalize whorehouses.
No, I don't want to legalize it, Jack. I'm just saying if you can't get rid of it, at least move it into an area where you can control it.
I'll go along with that.
Now, where's an area where you can control it? Put it down in the industrial area where the warehouses actually
Where
are.
no people live. Just always where,
Not where
no
people live. Where people put up a toll gate and charge tit for tat.
Okay, thank you very much. That's just silly, of course. Oops. Go ahead, please.
Good morning. I'd like to agree with Phyllis with all the problems she's been having, but I also do believe that our city police could do something about it. There are anti-loitering laws, there are anti-noise bylaws.
Don't enforce.
Automobiles are not allowed to go screeching around at 4 o'clock in the morning. As a matter of fact,
Why are they allowed to do that in Mount Pleasant then? That's what I keep asking.
But
Why?
you told me yourself the police are on a 4-day week on the task force.
the anti-noise bylaw is in effect after 11 o'clock at night. There has to be some reasoning before it. I cannot understand what the police force does not put in. And okay, we can say because we haven't got enough money. That doesn't mean our taxes have gone down. I think our taxes have gone up. Hire some more men, get them out there, get them working, get them motoring around and say, move along, please, keep moving, keep moving. That's a stop sign. You got to move. You can't park there, sir. Why are you there?
That's what we'd like to see.
There can be harassment on both sides, and I think these people in Mount Pleasant have had enough.
Thank you,
We
ma'am.
have.
You've got a good supporter there, didn't you? Go ahead, please.
It seems to me that the people in Mount Pleasant, represented by Mrs. Alfeld, have recourse to a principle of law that I believe was known as natural justice. And if there's a breakdown of the law enforcement agencies, as there appears to have been here, they should take the law into their own hands and announce publicly and follow it up with a patrol which will force these law-abiding citizens to do their own work. This will in turn bring the power of the state to their side, because they will not tolerate an interference by the individual in a situation such as this. In other words, they have to take the law into their own hands.
That would bring the power. Would that not bring the power of the state against them?
They'll have to take that chance. I doubt very much if the power of the state would see itself free to prosecute them and ignore the real problem, which is the problem of not enforcing a reasonable law in an area that is not allowing these people to have peace of mind and tranquility in the use of their property.
One does not like to advocate what is quite obviously vigilante action.
It's getting to that, Jack.
The only alternative, obviously. If somebody is attacking you and the police are not going to prevent this, you have to take the law into your own hands and take the consequences.
Well, you've tried the peaceful method of shaming them out of the place, really, have you not? You
yes,
walk up and down,
we're
you talk
on
to
the
them.
streets 2-3 hours a night as a group, every single night, standing on corners, trying to defend our turf from being taken over. But I have to say, we are a nonviolent group, but people have had, I don't know if I can control the other people in my group who are fed up with meetings. There's a lot of people in there with the 2x4 mentality, with baseball bats, who they've had it. They've just had it.
Well, you can't allow that to develop.
I know it. Is it my job all the time to calm them down all the time?
No,
I mean, I do. I do it all day. I talk to these
Okay, let's
people.
go for another batch of phones with Phyllis Alfeld after the break. We're taking nominations for areas in Vancouver which would like an invasion of prostitutes, because East and West Mount Pleasant are sick and tired of it. Now, look into the camera and tell me, is it honestly true it's as bad as the West End was? Can you look out or walk around and see sex acts, drug dealings in the open?
Well, do you know what you can, like I said, we walk the streets every night. And we've seen it all, Jack. We've seen it all. But then often you'll get somebody driving by the area, and they drive in quickly and out quickly, and they don't see a lot of things happening. A lot of this is happening at 1, 2, 3 in the morning. That sort of thing. Often when the police go off shift, girls are right back again too. It's a real serious problem.
Must be a hell of a lot of customers around.
There's a hell of a lot of customers around who shouldn't be around, that's for sure.
Go
a lot
ahead.
of family men with, it's really funny because I also watch the cars going by too, and you see a lot of nice middle-class cars with a baby seat in the back, and they're out getting the girls too, so.
The police should stop them and check the registration and phone the wife.
I think
and
we
see
should
if,
just make sure they got their seatbelts on too.
and see if the old lady knows he's out down in Mount Pleasant.
Yeah.
Go ahead, please.
I'll give this lady a lot of credit and her group, but what I see myself, I live here at 10th and Manitoba, and what I see is that the police don't really harass these girls at all. What they do is usually just kibitz with them. They'll pull up and talk to them for a few minutes and drive away.
They do
And I
that.
like to see them get out of their cars, stand around the corner, ask them for ID, and just keep bugging them. And I think that's what they need. If John's pull up and see a police officer stand there talking to the girls, he'll keep moving.
That's what I told the Vancouver
I don't
Police
think they
Force.
have done a damn thing like this.
Just a minute. What did you tell the Vancouver Police Board?
I told the Vancouver Police Board that we needed a highly visible police presence there 7 days a week, and I looked at the gentleman on the board and I asked them that if they came to Mount Pleasant to pick up a hooker and a police cruiser car drove up to them, wouldn't they hightail it out of there pretty fast? So just the visibility of the police is a wonderful thing to have, if it's 7 days a week.
Did you get much of a response from the police board?
I don't know. They seem to not be able to speak. I look at them and I say, well, what are you going to do to help me? And they just sit there.
Like a bunch of dummies.
Absolutely. I begged them for help.
Harcourt spoke.
Mike Harcourt, I asked him, what are we going to do? Because Chief Bob Stewart had just told me he will not give us any more police. And in essence, what Chief Stewart told us was if we didn't like it, we could lump it. So I asked Mayor Harcourt what I should go back. What should I tell the residents, the businesses, and the schools of Mount Pleasant? And he said, come to a meeting on Tuesday night and we'll discuss the problem. At which point, I said, of course, Mr. Harcourt, you know what the problem is. Chief Bob Stewart knows what the problem is. The residents know what the problem is. The criminal element knows what the problem is. Why are we having a meeting if you've already told me you won't do anything about it?
But what you're really saying is that the police are not attempting to enforce visible breach of the criminal laws.
True.
That's what you're saying. That's
Yes.
the accusation you're making against the police department.
And the other laws. You can do anything you want in our area.
Traffic laws, all the
Oh, they
laws.
drive over the sidewalks. It doesn't matter.
Go
Anything
ahead
you
from
want.
Seashelt.
Hello, Jack.
Yes.
Jack, I'm totally in sympathy with these people. It seems to me that history is replete with the fact that you'll never stamp out this problem no matter what you do.
We know that.
So why don't we do what other civilized people do, establish places where they can have this business and regulate it by the regulating agencies?
Sure, legalize whorehouses. That would be a great model step forward for Canada.
Do other cities not have this problem?
Not in this country. In the United States, they've got some tatty places in Arizona. We've always had bawdy houses of various descriptions, which are subject to prosecution. Surely, nowadays, we're not going to start encouraging pimping, legalized pimping, living off the avails of prostitution, bringing up our youngsters to go for that great goal in life, be a hooker in a British Columbia whorehouse. I'm totally against it. Although I could give a good lecture on, you know, you could do a great PR campaign on attracting nice young girls, very young girls, to go into this great business of prostitution to relieve the tension of businessmen. You could launch a great campaign. There's a moral decision. No whorehouses. Do you agree?
I'm with you, Jack, on that one.
So stupid. Let the Americans have the whorehouses. All the Germans, all the French. The French closed them. The French closed them because of the spread of venereal disease from whorehouses. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, good morning, Jack. I actually agree with the gentleman that was just on. There should be legalized prostitution.
An old soldier.
I spoke to you about 18 months ago on this subject when I said to you then that back in the early 60s down in the Dominican Republic, they'd already sorted this one out. It was run by the government.
Don't compare us with the Dominican Republic. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, I just wondered, like, how come, like they say, to move them in a different place? Why don't they move them down in Gastown in the evenings? So, because Gastown seems pretty quiet at night, everybody's down there, and it's very close to the cop shop, but there's a lot of police. Because if they move them at up around Shaughnessy or wherever, you know, they'd be out right away. But it seems the people, like the lady there, where she lives, she has to get on the air and be talking, and nobody seems to do nothing about it.
That's
if
right.
it was in Shaughnessy, then all the work is, like the cops are there right away.
Fair enough. All that you want, Phyllis, and I'm sure you realize the difficulties the police have in collecting evidence. I mean, the little old lady can go out and watch a couple shooting up in the bushes. If there's a policeman around, they won't be shooting up in the bushes.
The couple won't even be there. The bad guys won't be there if the police are there.
Surely what you want is an intelligent enforcement of every available law in your area.
Show them we mean business. Show them we're not going to take this.
And you accuse the police and Harcourt of not doing that.
Yes, that's true.
Now, you're serious in your
They are
accusation.
they are always trying to sidetrack us and always say the solution lies in Ottawa. While I still want that amendment to go through in the criminal code,
You want
what
action.
are we supposed to do in the meantime?
Go ahead, please. Where are you?
Hello, Jack.
That's you.
Listen, what happened to the old Vagrancy Act?
That was taken away many years ago. Vagsy, loitering as a prostitute, known to be a prostitute, and that was a sweep them off the streets act, which I don't think we could bring back, and certainly would to be totally illegal under the Charter of Rights, I'm afraid. And it was a bad act. There was Vag C and Vag A, and they were both draconian measures which we didn't need. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Yes.
Your language appalls me.
What language?
No, I think they can solve the problem very simply.
Mm-hmm. Tell me how.
How?
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 Well, we can save money, say from centralize the problem at the same time, say from 7 at night to 7 in the morning, to clear City Hall a public whorehouse.
Oh, I like it.
I
like it.
Oh, I know you were. But well, you got a laugh from us, I assure you. I didn't want to laugh too hard. Go ahead, please. Where are you? You're next. Hello. My mistake. I've done something wrong, Jeanette. Where is Queen Charlotte City? You want to do this? Go ahead, please.
Yeah, Jack?
Yes.
I work the Mount Pleasant area, and I'd like to know where do you suggest we go?
What do you mean you work the Mount Pleasant area?
What do you think I mean? I'm a prostitute there.
Either that or you're pulling my leg, being smart aleck.
No, they're there.
They're there.
They're there.
I suggest you go jump in the lake.
Really?
Yeah, I mean, that's a joke. But how's business in Mount Pleasant?
Well, come on now. You're debating an issue right here. You're not letting me have my say.
Well, have your say.
Well, where do you suggest we go?
You asked me a question. I told you to go jump in the lake.
Yeah, I can't agree with that.
Fair enough. Well, don't jump in the lake. Dear, dear. He's just pulling my leg anyway. He's not one of your prostitutes in Mount Pleasant.
You never know. We've got them all. We've got
Could have been.
transvestites. We've got everybody.
But I find it hard to believe. Go ahead,
He's
please.
probably getting you.
Yes, good morning, Jack.
Morning.
Yes, I don't live in Mount Pleasant, but I spend practically most of my time there. I have girlfriends that live there. And the other night, it's not just the hookers that come. The other night, there was somebody climbing up the apartment building and looking in the windows of girls in the bedroom in the apartment I was in.
So I keep telling people it's not as simple as a girl on a street corner.
In other
Your
words,
whole neighborhood goes to hell.
That's right.
No, and
of
I
course,
suggest that, I don't know really what to suggest, but I spend most of my time there, and I'm just disgusted when I go over there because it's a nice area. The people that live there are hard-working, middle-class people that like to have their privacy, and I think that the police should be there more often. I hardly ever see them there when I'm there.
okay, just to sum up your quote demands, you want the prostitute task force there not 4 days a week, but 7 days a week.
7 days and 7 nights, if that's what it
And
takes,
you
because
want-
we have daytime prostitution to deal with as well.
And you want policemen on their feet in the area,
I
not
want them
necessarily.
working. I want them to show the criminal element and everybody else that they mean business, not just doing a little show and dance for public relations.
Phyllis Alfeld of the Mount Pleasant Group, thank you very much for coming
You're
in
very
your
welcome.
jammies from the City Hall.
Back to City Hall now.
You're going back now to see
Absolutely.
Mikey.
Well, I don't know. Maybe he won't want to see me. He's always in a meeting.
My thanks to Phyllis Alfeld. Now we're going to
Okay,
speak
thank
to
you.
Dave Abbott of the Canadian Travel Agents Association after the break.
I'm done.
Dave Abbott is the BC president of the Alliance of Canadian Travel Associations, and he's come down from Vernon to tell me why some people in the business go broke and to warn me against booking tours with certain type of operation. How do I avoid getting swindled?
You go to a reputable travel agent. Now, a reputable travel agent is as easy to find as anybody else reputable. You've got to keep your wits about you. You've got to look for a travel agent who's been in business for a good length of time, who has a good solid background. Now, it would pay you to make inquiries of that nature. When you walk into a travel agency, ask the guy how long he's been in business, what sort of...
Dave, you're being too nice, Nelly, about the whole thing. When I see my special going to Barbados for $247, including 7 days and nights in a hotel, and the rate from one of the airline companies direct to one of the big travel agents is $897, I'm taking a chance.
Sure you are.
Anytime I go on a cut rate, I'm taking a chance.
Absolutely.
And there's no guarantee I'll get back.
Right, yeah, there's that possibility.
How many have gone belly up? Name of goodness, I've got a list in front of me that would choke a horse.
Yeah, okay, but there is a perspective on it. There's millions of dollars of business being done in the travel industry every year in BC.
But they don't hit
Hundreds
the
of millions.
headlines.
That's right. The 99% of everyone who takes a trip has a wonderful time and they come back happy. And the publicity that hits at a time like this is dealing with the 1%.
Jetlink, for instance.
Yeah.
I mean, sure, they all got back eventually, and sure, they didn't have... Did they have to pay any extra money to get back?
Not to my knowledge. This illustrates the... it's a good illustration of the cooperation within the industry. For example, I'm going to give a little plug here for Ward Air. Ward Air picked up a lot of passengers coming back from Britain who were Jetlink customers. Now, they didn't pick up any money on it. They just lifted the return airline coupons, and Air Canada and British Airways are also helping out in the same way. Now, Ward Air, British Airways, Air Canada, they will be reimbursed through the fund on behalf of the clients who would otherwise have had to pay money to get back.
In other words, they'll get the rate which, say, Jetlink had given them. They'll get that back from the fund.
That's right.
They won't get their full fares back.
I'm not sure of the breakdown, but they will get something back.
All right, now, okay, we know about the good travel agents, and I believe you when you say 99%, but sketch me a depressing picture of a guy who starts with no facilities except money to buy an ad, and a $15,000 bond?
Yes, that's about right.
How does he manage to keep going at all?
Okay,
I mean, what's the gimmick? What do they do with my money that I don't get value for? How do they go broke?
Okay, well, again, we have to develop the separation between travel agents and tour operators and wholesalers. The retail travel agent has a very minimal risk because he's dealing with a product which he doesn't have to buy until it's sold. That is, he doesn't put any investment in the hotel room, the airline seat, the package, that sort of thing. The wholesaler or the tour operator, he has to make a commitment to the airline, to the hotel, to the cruise line, whatever it is. And it's when that financial commitment is shown to be shrinking at the end of the season, it's generally speaking the end of the season, it's a sort of cut and run process. They say, well, you know, we've got 200 seats left over, we've got to get rid of them. Instead of getting on the British market, for example, instead of getting $750 for them, which is what we need to survive, let's get at least something. We'll give them away for $500. And when you see at the end of the season, or really in any part of the season, when you see these giveaways happening, that's got to be a danger signal. It really has.
Any bargain price is a danger signal.
Any super low bargain price. Now, there are, you know, Air Canada right now, or the major Canadian airlines across the country, Air Canada, CP, Pacific Western, they're all offering seat sales, but they're doing it on a very restrictive, selective basis. And I'm not saying because Air Canada advertises a 70% seat sale, don't go and buy it.
No.
If you can get in on it, fine. But where you see the charter flight operator who, in a marketplace where a ticket to Britain is $750, and suddenly somebody comes out with $550, $600, take a very close look at it. Because
what you must explain to me, because I'm kind of thick on these things, is if I'm buying from a legitimate 100% travel agent on an airline, when I give them the check, I'm buying my space then and there, and that's all they do with the money. They spend it for the space.
Yeah.
Right? If I'm a wholesale operator, a tour operator in the wholesale business, I go out and I buy a bunch of seats, is that right?
Yeah.
Or a bunch of hotel rooms.
Yeah.
And I'm committed for them.
That's right.
At a special rate.
Yeah.
And if I don't sell them all, I'm down the tube.
That's right.
It's as simple as that.
That's right.
So beware of wholesalers.
That's a sweeping statement. Beware of wholesalers who are operating at below the bargain end of the market. I heard Stewart Goodings earlier on, and he was saying if the criterion for what you buy is the lowest possible dollar price, then you're heading straight into trouble. It's like any other product. You get what you pay for.
Yeah, but these tour operators are really something different from a travel agent.
Yeah, a travel agent the travel industry has the same distribution chain as any other industry. It's like hardware. The airlines and the hotels manufacture the product. The wholesalers put the product together in bulk, and the retailers distribute it to the public. That's the way it works pretty well.
Yeah, but if I'm dealing with a tour operator, is he identified as such, or is he called a travel agent?
There's no obvious identification of that, but generally speaking, the reputable or the tour operators, obviously, that we like dealing with are the ones who say, see your travel agent. If you see an ad in the paper from a major airline, a major charter company, a major tour company, they will put a tag on the end. Call us or see your travel agent.
Now, do you advocate an increase in the fees that you should pay to cover the insurance scheme?
No, I don't.
Well, you're not paying very much just now.
Well, I know, but the industry has been paying for the last 7 years, and hopefully with a full-time registrar now in place, Frank Bazaran, we're going to be looking more at the prevention of these problems rather than the cure and the rescue of these problems.
Fair enough. We're going to talk more with Dave Abbott, and I'm going to take your calls on it because, you know, I generally deal straight with an airline company. Don't use a travel agent.
Why not?
Because I'm afraid of all these belly-up things.
You want to line up at the airport?
I've never lined up at an airport in my life. After the break. Your calls. Dave Abbott is president of the Alliance of Canadian Travel Associations. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning. My brother was booked on the Sunday, September 22nd flight from Manchester Airport to Vancouver. I bought the ticket for him here in Canada because our mother was dying. I got a phone call from the travel agent to say that we had a slight problem. The airline had gone bankrupt. My brother sat till Monday night still hoping to hear from someone from JetLink. Ward Air said no, they wouldn't fly him out. They wanted 3 weeks' notice. Our mother since died on the Friday. I had to pay full fare British Airways on the Tuesday to get him out. But the point is, JetLink in Horsham in the UK is still solvent. They wouldn't fly him out. Quebec Air, which was the carrier, would not fly him out. And the man that went bankrupt here in Canada is a previous owner of Century Tours. JetLink Canada was the man that owns one of the partners of Century Tours that went belly up last year.
I'm not sure of some of those situations. There is a company in Britain. I'll take the last part of your question first. There's a company in Britain, Century Tours UK, which is no connection at all with Century Tours in Canada. It's just a coincidental name.
By JetLink Horsham in Surrey, that the man who owns Century Tours here in Canada was one of the partners of JetLink. Not Century Tours in the UK, Century Tours here.
But you have a good question I can put to Mr. Abbott. When a man goes belly up in this business, and there certainly was one other famous character, can he get back in again, no bother?
At the moment, he can get back in again if he's a little bit careful how he sets up his company and lists himself on his company. We are very concerned about the repeat activities of people who've been involved in failures.
Any doubtful operator, you could exclude him from the insurance plan, couldn't you? Say, get the hell out, we're not going to cover you, you've done it before.
At the moment, no, but if I can just, I'm not sidestepping the lady's question, but if I can just go on to the earlier comments from Stewart Goodings, one of the things that I'm very hopeful of in the new regulations going through in the Travel Act is the Travel Council, which is being put together to help the registrar screen applicants for getting into the industry.
Okay, fair enough. But what about her point that she bought a ticket on JetLink?
Yeah.
Emergency trip?
Yeah. Can I just clarify one thing, madam? Was this an outbound trip from Canada or the return half of the trip from Britain?
No, what happened, I bought the ticket here with a reputable agent here in Vancouver. The flight was Manchester, Vancouver, Manchester. And because the flight originated in Manchester, although paid in Canadian dollars, we were told, you know, that's your problem. The Canadian government couldn't reimburse me because my brother was coming out from England. But the point was, it wasn't the money. We've had to pay $2,000 Canadian to get him out British Airways. There was a flight leaving on Monday afternoon from Manchester International with Ward Air, with seats. But the Ward Air said, I'm sorry, we need 3 weeks' notice.
Okay,
to make it legal.
Yeah.
Make it legal.
Whilst I appreciate your situation and the difficulty you went through, An originating flight where the journey has not even commenced yet is not dealt with the same priority as people who are already at their destination trying to get home.
Well, that's a classic example of the dangers of buying from an outfit like JetLink.
I'm afraid it is, yeah.
Thank you, ma'am. Best of luck. Cost you $2,000. Go ahead, please.
Yes, good morning, Jack. This is not necessarily on the topic, but it's a question of consistency. You mentioned, made remarks to Leon Bibb when he wore a bow tie, but this gentleman has a bow tie on. You haven't made one comment. Would you please comment?
Perfectly nice bow tie.
I tied it myself. It's not a clip-on.
My God. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Mr. Webster and Mr. Abbott.
Morning.
I'd like to know, well, first of all, there seems to be a sort of a protectionism happening here for higher prices. Because every time I fly to Europe, I always go via Seattle, and I always go for about half to a third of what I would be paying from Vancouver. I always go Martin Air, and I go $199 this time. I'm leaving on November the 4th.
Which airline?
Martin Air.
Martin Air. It's a Dutch charter company.
Martin Air. That's $200 from here to Britain?
Yeah, 200 US, 199 US. To Amsterdam.
Amsterdam. I don't think it's Britain.
Yeah, and
then it costs you $200 from Amsterdam to Newcastle. Okay, go ahead, carry on.
Well, it just seems like, it's the industry getting together, to try and, justify higher prices and things like that. I've never had a problem, and I've traveled a lot, my time, and I just can't see justifying these higher Canadian prices.
Good comment.
Okay, can I just comment on that? First of all, the figure of 199, okay, that's pretty low, but it is US dollars. He's talking about a one-way fare. 400 US round trip is getting close to 600 Canadian, which is getting close to the Canadian marketplace.
Which is 788 or something.
Yeah, it's getting to that ballpark. So it's not just a cut and dried situation.
Yeah, true enough. I checked it out once, and it didn't do me that much good. And then you had to go to Seattle.
That's right. And
park your car and fly to Seattle. Yeah. Mix with all these people down there. Go ahead, please.
One quick question, then I want to come back. Are Canadian travel agents licensed?
They're registered on a provincial basis. Now, this is an interesting point, and it's one that I would personally like to see happen. The real estate industry, the insurance business, they all have licenses which require that their practitioners pass exams before they get into the business. And I would like to see that happen, but I don't think it's going to weed out the problem.
No, I'm dead against it for the same reason. I don't think the real estate should have a private council. I don't think many of these semi-professional bodies should have private council, because then you can set up a little secret club and wash your dirty linen in private. It's bad, like the doctors do.
Secret club or not, it's still going to guarantee good service to the public.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I don't know about that. What about the lawyers and the doctors?
It occurs to me that it would come out much as the CAA, Canadian Automobile Association, approves mechanics.
Maybe it's
you weren't going to get hosed by a CAA approved
Okay, I back off.
Much as you
Hold on, I'll use your next question after the break. I think, have you another question?
Yes, I do.
Carry on.
If you look in the want ads in the newspaper, the province anyway, there's a whole column full of instant plane fares. I mean, and a friend of mine was trying to get rid of a ticket last week at a Ward Air charter. And so we went through the process of phoning these people up to see if they would buy the ticket off us. And these guys are offering like a 2-week vacation at a luxury resort in Mexico with return airfare and a hotel and a cruise, all these things packed into one little package for something like $7.99. And what I wanted to do is hear your comment about how come the Canadian Travel Association, I don't know what your legal status is, but how come an association like the Canadian Travel Association can allow that sort of thing to happen? I mean, obviously it's a boondoggle.
Well, are you talking about the display ads or classified ads?
No, they're just little, flight of called. I shouldn't say the name, I suppose, but one of the ones in particular is you just phone up the number. They have a tape-recorded message which makes offers, and it gives you a number to call if you want to take them up on it.
Okay, I sense you're talking about a a last-minute club or something like that.
I didn't want to say the name.
Yeah, well,
That's fine.
I don't think that's a brand name of anyone's activities, but there are companies that specialize in selling off trips at the last minute, which, no, let's go back to the beginning. This is a very competitive industry. We have regulations which bind us in a financial way. The airlines sign contracts with every travel agent so that the travel agent will represent their product in the way that the airlines want it represented. So we are governed, but we are also working in the open marketplace. And
but you also have to have good credit before the airlines will give you permission to write tickets on
That's right, that's right.
I mean, that's one of your things that you must have.
But there are, I mean, you mentioned the figure of $7.99. Now, okay, $800 is a respectable figure for a package tour for a week in Mexico, but don't forget that just about all the prices you ever see advertised are based on two people traveling together sharing the same accommodation.
What about slogging the other half of your World Air Charter? Is that legal or illegal?
It's illegal. You look at any air ticket, and under in the portion of the ticket that contains your name, there's two words, not transferable.
But obviously people are doing it and getting away with it.
They're doing it, they're getting away with it, but they're doing it at their own risk. And this is another situation. If people are answering ads, classified ads in the newspaper saying, return half of a ticket to London, $200 or whatever, it's entirely up to you if you take the trip, but please don't come looking for any recompense if it goes wrong.
You might get caught on the passport check by
Well, that's
chance.
right. I mean, the airlines are within their rights to check identification of people getting on the airplane.
What will they do to one if you do get onto an airplane in that circumstance?
If you're on the airplane and it's in the air, they're not going to do anything. But if you're at the airport and somebody at the check-in counter decides to look at your passport and compare the name with your ticket, then they're going to say, I'm sorry, this isn't your ticket. Goodbye.
Goodbye and God bless you. Interesting. It's a good program. Go ahead, please.
Good morning, Jack.
Morning.
I was one of the passengers. It was nearly all senior citizens on that century tour in Quebec Airline. We booked the tickets in December, and then we were passed from the Quebec Airline and Century to Skyline, then from Skyline to Jetline. But I must speak highly of the Bell Travel Agency in Newton. They did everything they could to get us on the passage, and they couldn't get us out of Vancouver, but they motored us all to Seattle and seen us all to our destinations in London and back again with no problem.
Great to hear that.
Wanted to say, but all the travel agencies are not bad.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
I know that, and now a few more people.
I know it.
Now Jack knows that, yeah.
I'm easy convinced anyway. Go ahead, please.
Yeah, hello. I was wondering if these companies that own oil tankers full of oil can insure them to go up those Persian Gulfs to be fired at and hit mines and everything, why couldn't you guys go through Lloyd's of London to insure yourselves against this sort of thing happening? Take the money in the bank, and instead of using it to bring people back, use it to buy an insurance policy of some sort.
Well, at the moment, the closest we get to that is instead of Lloyd's of London, we've got Travel Agents of BC, and we are funding our own insurance. There is some thought within the industry that with the incredible bargains that consumers are pursuing, then maybe the consumer should be willing to put up $1 or $2 of his own money to create a fund where there'll be absolute security.
He'd be willing to put up
a fund, though, you know, because that takes a bigger amount of money than a premium would. Are you saying that Lloyd's of London won't touch you guys?
No, we haven't approached Lloyd's of London. I hope the problem doesn't get that large.
Instead of like a guy saving up enough money to rebuild his property in case it burns down, he goes out and he buys insurance.
Yeah, let me just get back to that point again for 1 second there. We are part of a national organization of ACTA, Alliance of Canadian Travel Associations, and on a national basis, there is a plan put forward. It's called a performance plan, which is basically an insurance plan of something along the lines I think the gentleman is getting at. The difficulty is that of the 10 provinces across the country, some, such as BC, Ontario and Quebec, are legislated and regulated. All the others are not. It's a wide open marketplace. So it's difficult to get consistency.
There certainly would be no point in buying insurance from a shaky operator, like giving JetLink an extra $5. That wouldn't do you a damn good.
Any additional collection of that nature would be put into a central fund. It wouldn't be held by the operator.
That's if you could get it away from it in time.
Okay.
Go ahead, please.
Yes, Hannah Peterson. I was at Gatwick Airport yesterday morning, and we found out by being in lineup that JetLink wasn't flying their people back.
Right.
And I want to give my praise to Ward Air and also British Airways, because they did everything to get their people back.
There we go.
And they were very, very helpful.
Thank you for calling.
Huh?
Thank you very much
No,
for that
Hannah,
comment. Yeah.
you were coming back on what had been a JetLink charter.
No, I wasn't. I was booked myself with Ward Air. I never booked through a travel agency. I always go directly.
You're like me.
Right, exactly. And never no problem. But I will say in Britain and in Europe, whenever you have dealing with an airline, they just bend over backwards to please you. They're not like over here. I find they're a lot nicer over there. British Airways and Ward Air, they were just fabulous.
Ward Air's a
And
Canadian.
the people, they seemed very, very pleased too with the service they were getting.
Thanks, Hannah.
You're welcome.
God bless. One more segment with Dave Abbott after the break.
To Montreal.
Dave Abbott is the BC president of ACTA. And we're going to talk to this person. Go ahead, please.
Hello. It's just back to the legitimate travel agents. I've always been reluctant to book with them because I assume there'd be a great price difference. And from what I've heard, I guess there isn't. And if there is none, I was just wondering how they pay their overhead, the actual travel agents, if they don't pass the monies on to the consumer.
Okay, let me let you into a deep, dark secret. We're in this business for profit. We hope to make a living at it. The airlines and the companies with whom we deal pay us a commission to distribute their product. And that commission is unrebatable to the general traveling public. So in a nutshell, that's how we make our money.
Yeah.
We have the benefit of the cash flow that comes in at the sale of a ticket, and then we send in a net amount, and we keep a little bit for ourselves, and that's the way. That's how the oil greases the wheels.
Can you use my money when I buy my package from you until such time as you're required to pay the airline, or do you hold it in trust for me?
No, we don't have trust accounts in British Columbia. That's one of the possibilities that's being investigated under the new regulations that Stewart Goodings mentioned earlier on.
That would hang you if you had to put all your revenue into trust.
It would certainly create a difference in our cash flow position, certainly.
But it would protect me totally.
I don't know that it would totally, because if somebody, I mean, we're dealing with perspectives and percentages again. I mean, if somebody's determined to go out of business, the biggest check they're going to bounce is the one on the trust company.
Right. Go ahead. Oh, did I take the wrong one? Go ahead, please.
Yes, I was going to ask. Yesterday, I went into a reputable.
Travel agent.
Hello.
Hello, love. Start again. Yesterday you went into a
reputable agency to check on the return fares from Vancouver to Los Angeles.
Right.
And the first class was just over $500. Tourist was $314. But there was a charter flight for $199 return.
Yeah.
From what I've heard this morning, does that indicate that that charter flight is having problems and I wouldn't get back? There are restrictions. You leave on a Saturday and you come back the following Saturday.
Are you talking about a CPR?
No, I'm talking about a charter flight. CPR as the tourist, the cheapest you can get with the major carriers is $314.
Right.
This one is $199 return, and I just couldn't believe it.
All right. Now, what I would suggest you do is don't shy away from that $199, but be aware, as you seem to be, of the restrictions involved, the advance booking requirement. Be aware also that there are non-refundable penalties if you cancel your trip before you leave. Check which airline is operating the aircraft.
It's Western.
Western Airlines. Well,
I imagine the plane is Western.
They're going to. Yeah, it's a program. It's a fare base put together by Western Airlines, and if Western have got it, you can bet your boots that CP and United will probably match it, or they already have done. I wouldn't shy away from that $199. If you can use it, if it fits your requirements, then terrific. You've just saved yourself $115.
The charter is under a different name. It's not going under Western.
Oh, if it's Western Airlines, I'm sure it's as safe as houses.
Well, okay, I would, if Western, I haven't got the numbers in front of me, but if Western Airlines themselves are not publishing a fare for $1.99, then go the next step and just ask the travel agent who is the charter operator. And if you have any concerns, you can phone our association and or just check with other travel agents, get different opinions.
Yeah, but that'd be safe as houses, I'm sure. Go ahead, please.
Yes, Jack. Good morning.
Morning.
I'd like to just identify a fact on a JetLink flight in May that a number of travel agents were above board in giving complete information on this ridiculous prodigal fare that we took. There were 4 people on my flight that didn't know until they were in the air that they were on standby, and the standby wasn't a daily standby, it was week-to-week standby. They didn't know that when they got on the plane, so it was a case of a couple of travel agents, one in Victoria and one in Vancouver, that did not fully identify the conditions of that flight. Yes, it was cheap, and yes, we got good service from the Quebec Air personnel, but it caused some people a lot of concern, and I myself would not have taken a JetLink flight if I had been aware that there was this 1 week standby. The travel agent made it sound like it was just a 1 day standby, and I said, well, I could handle that. I guess you was after a commission and want to sell a ticket, eh?
Well, I don't want to second guess the motives, but there's a whole swamp of rules, regulations, restrictions, and as a rule of thumb, the less you pay, the more restrictions you're going to have to get through.
What do you mean a 1 week standby? Did he mean that?
Well, my understanding of this prodigal fare was that you had a confirmed reservation to Europe, and then on the return, you had an open ticket on a standby basis. But what seems not to have been identified sufficiently is that the flight only operates once a week. Now, if you're standing by on one day, you can afford to get the next day or the day after. But if you're standing by 1 week, it's not easy to wait 2 extra weeks.
Much obliged for your call. It was very informative. Okay, briefly, go ahead, please.
Yeah, I'd like to comment first of all on you. You're doing an excellent show. Secondly, I'd like to know why the airfare is the same as your boat fare to Australia. It's $1,000 one way, and then that's by plane. And it's $1,300 return.
Yeah.
And
quick, what's your question? Why is it the same as the boat fare? Is it the same as the boat fare?
I'm not up on one-way boat fares to Australia. It's been a while since I sold one, but I suspect the ship fare is more expensive on a one-way basis.
Thanks for flying down from your agency, Rainbow Travel Service in Vernon, to appear here as President of the Alliance of Canadian Travel Associations.
Thank you very much. Thanks, Jack.
Much obliged. I'll be back after the break. Right to the heart of the troubles in the House of Commons tomorrow days with the fellow by the name of Broadbent, who's been very aggressive and tough in the House of Commons. Ed Broadbent, NDP leader, 9 a.m. precisely. Ed Broadbent, direct from Ottawa, at 9 a.m. precisely. The House of Commons these days is like a drama, a stage show. We'll get Ed Broadbent's version of it with Webster tomorrow at 9.